So the Chinese foreign minister just admitted that he wants to see Russia win. And China's position is that they want to see Russia win. Now, I'm going to explain what I'm talking about, and I'm going to talk about 6 other stories, including Trump's call with Putin, followed by this massive bombing overnight, followed by Trump's call with Zelenskyy, and what was said in there that is useful moving forward. Okay, so let's start here. China is increasingly open about assisting Russia with its war in Europe. Okay, like this is from the South China Morning Post. China tells the EU it does not want to see Russia lose its war in Ukraine. And here's what was said, a summary from Anton Gershchenko. Foreign Minister of China Wang Yi reportedly told Kaya Kallas that Beijing cannot afford a Russian loss in Ukraine because it fears, this is why, this is really important, it fears that a Russian loss would mean that the United States would then shift its whole focus to Beijing. Okay. So we know that they've been shipping not war materials, at least overtly, but, dual purpose kind of goods to Russia headlong. I mean, they've been doing plenty of that, but this is what's going on. Wang Yi categorically rejected accusations of financial or military support, or at least direct, or that's above board. But he noted that if China were really helping Moscow, the war would have ended a long time ago. Whoa, how about that? That's kind of a menacing statement. What China said was addressed not so much toward the EU as to the United States. The U.S. needs to understand that Russia is not just a threat to Ukraine and Europe, it's a common enemy. That's right. I think that's very fair. And the Chinese are backing the Russians. They want the U.S. They want Ukraine backed by Europe and the U.S. to lose this conflict. Okay. Now, the second big story. So Trump was just talking to Putin, and he didn't bring up anything about this weapons freeze. So there's this conflict here. Did Trump actually know? Both scenarios are bad. If Trump didn't know what was going on, that's a bad scenario because, well, why didn't he know? Why is Rubio not doing his job on his third job? Like, he's a Secretary of State and he's National Security Advisor and a couple of other things, right? So as National Security Advisor, why wouldn't he have informed him? So that would be bad. But the other scenario is worse, that Trump actually did know and was knew even all along while he was talking to Zelenskyy at NATO about he's going to get him some air defense. So either scenario is a bad thing, but there's we're not exactly sure what's happened here. But what we do know is this, that Trump had this phone call with Putin yesterday, and it didn't go so well, according to Trump. Meanwhile, immediately after the phone call, this was mothers and children running in Kyiv to try to get away from Shahed drones. There were 25 Shahed drones heading toward Kyiv at that time, and then it just kind of kept up all night. Now, Trump's comments were this about, this was an earlier comment, and then I'll show you some later comments.
Disappointed with the conversation I had today with President Putin, because I don't think he's there. I don't think he's there. And I'm very disappointed. Well, it's not, I'm just saying, I don't think he's looking to stop. And that's too bad. Yeah, I'm very.
Yeah, he's disappointed. He doesn't think that Putin's willing to stop. He's not, right? Okay, a little bit more.
Why did you pause weapons?
Why did you pause weapons was the question from the reporter.
We haven't. We're giving weapons, but we've given.
See, that's what I'm saying. How aware is he that this is going on? So that leads credence to the idea that he didn't know what his underlings were doing, and that's a bad scenario. But it's a less bad scenario than that he did know, but we just don't know at this point where it is.
So many weapons, but we are giving weapons, and we're working with them and trying to help them. But we haven't. Biden emptied out our whole country giving them weapons.
So we know it's all Biden's fault. Right, I get that. But he's saying that they are giving these weapons.
It was a pretty long call. We talked about a lot of things, including Iran. And we also talked about, as you know, the war with Ukraine.
He's talking about the call with Putin, and he talked about Iran and Ukraine.
And I'm not happy about that. I'm not.
And he's not happy about it. He's not happy about the aftermath of the call with Putin. Now, what's interesting about this, he didn't raise the idea or anything about the pullback and the amount of anti-air defense missiles kind of things that we were just talking about with Putin. He didn't say anything about that. We saw the transcript, right? So that, I guess, it kind of leads to some credence about that. We just don't know. Okay, Trump says that he'll speak with Zelenskyy tomorrow. That's today. And he's very disappointed in the conversation that he had with Putin, just saying he doesn't think he's going to stop. Okay, so that leads to today. So then after that, you have the largest attack of the war. I mean, the largest attack of the war, the most Shahed drones and missiles combined, 550. Wow. Okay. So then he talks with Zelenskyy, and Zelenskyy commented on his phone call with Trump today. And I just want to show you one paragraph. We had a detailed conversation about the defense industry capabilities and joint production. We are ready for direct projects with the United States and believe this is critically important for security, especially when it comes to drones and related technologies. Now, Trump isn't now Zelenskyy is very diplomatic, and Trump isn't necessarily stupid here. He knows that what Ukraine has been developing is great technology, and he would love to get his hands on it and be able to. I think that would be a great win-win kind of partnership. But you got to have the air defense security. So they talked about the air defense. We spoke about opportunities in air defense and agreed to work together in our skies. So between both of these, it was a very positive meeting as far as I can tell. Trump told Zelenskyy that he wants to help with Ukraine's air defense and that he will check what was put on hold, if anything, which again leads to the conclusion that he just was unaware, which isn't a good thing. But again, it's better than he was aware and is just trying to roll Ukraine. Okay, Ben Shapiro talking about this air defense being put on hold. And then I'll show you from the other side of the aisle, Ambassador Brink.
Russia's already deploying maneuverable ballistic missiles, able to avoid the vaunted Patriot air defense systems radar, and launching record numbers of drones to bombard Ukraine every 2 or 3 nights. A halt in the interceptors will heap further pressure on Ukraine. Now, again, Ukraine, Vladimir Zelenskyy, have done what President Trump has asked.
Yep.
They've said they will do a ceasefire today. No preconditions except for it just being a ceasefire. They have said that they want an end to the war. I mean, Vladimir Zelenskyy even wore a suit to the last meeting he had with President Trump.
Yep. And what happened after that? Looked like the rug was pulled out from under him. But I'm not sure if it actually was or if it's just misunderstanding of what's going on. There's Bridget Brink talking about this. Putin's goals and beyond go beyond Ukraine. In my 28 years working in the region, and remember, she was the former ambassador to Ukraine. She's now running for Congress. I've seen that he doesn't stop unless he's clearly opposed. He aims to reverse Ukraine's path toward the EU and NATO. He'll keep going unless firmly confronted.
What I want to say is that more strategically, I think Putin's goals are much bigger. I don't think it's just Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
I think people who think that, Putin will stop at Ukraine, that's not my experience in 28 years working in this part of the world.
And Hitler would stop in the Sudetenland.
Putin doesn't stop unless stopped, unless given clear positioning that we and partners will oppose a specific direction. I believe he's going to keep going. I think it's clear to me that he wants to reverse Ukraine's path toward not just the EU, which is where this all started, but also to NATO. I think
Yep, that's right. He can't have a competitor. So the NATO thing, most people latch onto, I don't want NATO on the border. Well, NATO's already on the border. I mean, between Lithuania and Poland, they're already there. There's not a question about that. I get it. That's the enclave. But Finland's on the border. And right. So NATO's already, but the EU having the alternative to Russia right there, showing that it's such an alternative to Russia is really, really bad. Like the Secretary of the Treasury just said that within a few decades, Ukraine's economy after the war could outstrip Russia's. It's growing in leaps and bounds, the technology, right? I don't think Putin wants that. Putin wants to have Ukraine again under the thumb of the Russians. Okay. Let's look at this. Dutch and German intelligence say that Russia is increasingly using chemical weapons in Ukraine, including deadly agents like chloropictrin, a serious violation of Chemical Weapons Convention. The use of tear gas and choking agents has also become routine. Well, that's on top of POWs being killed indiscriminately. So, again, Putin's not going to stop unless he's stopped. Meanwhile, U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff proposes lifting sanctions on the Russian energy sector. Steve Witkoff, Special Envoy to the U.S. President, is advocating for removal of energy sanctions on Russia. Now, there's conflict within the Trump administration. On the other side, the U.S. Interior Secretary, Doug Burgum, he's the former governor of North Dakota, I believe, prefers to push Moscow out of the market to make room for greater imports from the United States. So again, they're kind of clashing a bit within the administration. European officials fear that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin want to divide the European energy market and create separate spheres of influence. That may or may not be true. I don't have the proof to be able to say one way definitively. It kind of has looked like that's what they're trying to move towards. But again, we can't prove it yet. Okay, Darth Putin, unless November 24th, unless Putin stops the war, I will send Taurus. Amount of Russian bombing has doubled after that. And then July 24th, I am considering whether to send Taurus. He's talking about MERS, of course. And Putin only responds if you actually make him respond by doing, not just talking. Okay, I still have other stories. President Erdogan has arrived in Azerbaijan. As I've written before, Turkey is and will be taking advantage of Russia's declining positions in the region. An alliance between Turkey and Azerbaijan means major oil and gas hub that has the potential to replace Russia on the global energy market. So there's a competitor there in Turkey for energy, and that's pretty significant. And now there's also a military competitor as well. The information has appeared that a former Azerbaijani MP calls for a Turkish military base to be deployed in Azerbaijan. Former head of the presidential administration has said Nazamov has told the newspaper that Baku is under pressure from both Iran and Russia, and they're squeezed geographically between the two, like they're sandwiched right between them, which he sees as a threat to Azerbaijan's security. The only factor that can once and for all deter them from aggression against Azerbaijan is to clearly demonstrate the impossibility of such aggression, or that it would be very costly, right? That's how you need to be thinking about Putin, by the way, Mr. President. Okay, a decision should be made to deploy the largest Turkish military base in the region in Azerbaijan in the near future. It could be even leased to their other ally, the Pakistani Air Force, which possesses nuclear weapons. Like, the Azerbaijanis are pretty serious about breaking with the Russians, and Turkey might be the way to go. Now, another story here. Israel, in their 12-day war, destroyed a number of Iranian ballistic missile sites during the Israel-Iranian war. An Israeli analyst reported on July 3rd that Israeli airstrikes destroyed at least 20 Iranian missile bases. And again, degrading the Russian ally, that is Iran, was a pretty important thing. So they struck a lot of things. And I saw this in RT, and I just had to laugh. Iran, the general is kind of bragging, Iran only used 25 to 30% of its missile power and capacity in a 12-day war. But that means you could only last for a month. Like think about that. Like, if this were to kick off again, Iran, you would have nothing after a month, maybe a month and a week. And that's not exactly tough. I mean, that's pretty significant what happened to you. Okay, so Trump is distracted. The House just passed their big, beautiful bill, and so they're very happy about that. He's been focused on that sort of thing. But he's also focused on other things. Donald Trump just announced UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship fight in front of the White House. The match will be held in honor of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, which will be celebrated in 2026. And Trump called the upcoming match a championship fight, noted that up to 25,000 people would be able to attend. Okay, priorities. Finally, last story. Defenestration in Russia. This means scaling down the numbers that you have. Transneft Vice President Andrei Badalov, fell out of a window in Moscow and died. Now, people fall out of windows in Russia at a fairly record rate compared to the rest of the world. And I remember seeing on 1420, they were talking about, like, do you think that this is a lot of people falling out of windows? And they were like, well, people fall out of windows in lots of countries. No, but not like important people from major industries or major government posts at a record rate. Okay. Kremlin-owned Transneft is the world's largest pipeline company with over 70,000 kilometers of trunk pipelines transporting 80% of the oil and 30% of the oil products produced in Russia. Is he an important figure to make sure that they're making their money and get things working? Yeah. So this is what you call a metaphor alert. And so it's a metaphor alert for the health of the Russian economy. Things are going not so well there. And yeah, I mean, whether he fell, I can't tell you, but the Russian economy is in some bad shape. Do you want me to talk more about the Russian economy? I feel like I've talked about it too much, but since the last time I talked about it about 3 days ago, a lot of bad things have happened. If you want me to talk more about that, put that in the comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.